Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 20th episode of By the Drip. This podcast is about coffee, entrepreneurship, and the amazing people we meet through the story of coffee. I'm your host, David Crosby, founder and CEO of Rosso Coffee Roasters. And today, I'm joined by my brother, business partner, and the 2023 Canadian Brewers Cup champion, Cole Torode. Cole and myself chat about him winning Brewers Cup in Canada, placing 22nd on the world stage, and his top 3 tips for brewing amazing coffee at home. We had a lot of fun recording this one, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, we are back, and I have my sometimes co-host, sometimes brother, but full-time brewer.
Full-time what?
I have the Canadian 2023 Brewers Cup champion, Cole Torode, with us. And we're going to have to transform and go back into the memory banks to figure out what occurred for your Brewers Cup championship run and then going to Worlds. So welcome, Cole. Welcome to By the Drip.
Dave, thanks so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate you having me here, and haven't touched base with you for a little bit. So nice to jump on the line and have a conversation about something that happened just about a year ago. Let's get into
it. First time caller, long time listener.
I hope it's not long distance.
Not anymore, man. So let's talk about you winning in Canada. Let's go back to the beginning. What is Brewers Cup for our listeners, and why did you want to compete in a new discipline that you hadn't done in a very long time?
Sure. Brewers Cup is a filter coffee brewing championship. So the premise is you get 10 minutes to brew 3 identical cups of coffee for 3 judges, and you have to describe what you're doing, why you're doing it that way, what coffee you're using, how it's going to taste, not just taste, but full-on sensory experience from aroma, flavor, acidity, sweetness, mouthfeel, and aftertaste. I think I got it all in there. And then there's a secondary component, which is called compulsory, which you get, I believe it's 45 minutes all together to take an unidentified coffee and brew it to the best of your ability and serve, again, 3 of those, ideally as identical as possible, to judges that do not see you, do not know who you are, and you get scored based on the same criteria. And then everybody in the competition has to do this particular aspect. So there's kind of the presentation that's open to the audience, and then there's the behind the scenes. That was at least for our nationals, and things have slightly changed going to the World Championship and in national championships now, but that was Brewers Cup for us in 2023 in Canada.
So essentially you have one round where you're brewing face-to-face with 3 judges, and then if you score high enough in that round, you go to the second round, which is brewing. They give you a bag of coffee, you know nothing about it, make some decisions based on how it tastes, and then brew that, send it to judges that are not in front of you.
Yep.
And they evaluate that and then move on to the final round.
Yeah, that would be the new way of doing it. So that would be what I experienced at Worlds. First round, open service, you get to present, you get to serve the coffee you've brought, you get to do whatever it is that you've prepared for. Second round is that compulsory service, and top 12, so semifinal round, top 12 go to that. And then top 6 from the compulsory service move on to the final. And the final score is a collective between your compulsory service that you would have scored in the semifinals plus your open service that you've now delivered in the final round.
So why on earth you come out of retirement? Why are you doing Brewers Cup? Why, we're coaching Boram on his way to, the World Championships in Barista. He shows up in Canada and you're competing in Brewers Cup.
Yeah, surprise. There's a handful of reasons. I think the biggest one, if we look back on sort of fall 2022, I spent a lot of time at different expos, different trade shows, different sort of pop-up events, and spent a lot of time brewing coffee. And a lot of that was done with the same setup. I would carry my own setup. I've got it sitting here with me today. Honestly, it's metal V60s. I got some scales. I got my grinder, whatever. I got the goods, and I was so much in the repetition of brewing, and was really trying to focus at those shows and in those moments on brewing with precision, consistency, and delivering a top quality product. In those, I started kind of playing around with sort of blending coffee and seeing what would happen if I mixed together, this washed and this natural coffee, or mixed together these two naturals, one that's got red fruit flavors and one that's got florals, and see what happens if I start kind of playing with grind setting, playing with where they sit in the cup, all that sort of stuff. And kind of the combination of those two things led me into sort of the presentation and routine that was ultimately delivered in Canada and then sort of elevated to go to the world stage.
So it's really just pushing yourself while you're out on the road that you said, maybe I can compete in this, and I have an idea, a unique idea to bring to the table.
Yeah, I think so. And then maybe also, while I'm out there on the road talking to other like-minded industry professionals and friends, and sort of sharing some of that thought process with them, and kind of getting some confirmation that, this sounds pretty cool. This sounds like a unique idea, and maybe you should pursue it. And then realistically, the reason I did buy a ticket, I was with a friend, Kai Jansen, when the tickets went on sale for Canada. For those who don't know, you have to purchase a ticket to participate in a national championship. So I was with Kai Jansen when the tickets went on sale, and it just so happened the year prior we were together when the Panama tickets went on sale, and he said to me, should I buy a ticket? And I said, if you're asking, you probably should. And then he bought a ticket, he participated there, and then Zoom, a year later, and we're together again, and I ask him the question, and he kind of feeds me back the same answer and says, if you're asking, you probably should. So I buy this ticket, and then I think to myself, shit, what have I done? We're coaching Boram. I'm in Panama at the time. I believe Boram has just left Panama, and we're there sourcing the coffee for what's going to be his World Barista Championship in, let's say, 2.5 months, 3 months. I don't quite remember the timeline, but something like that. And now all of a sudden I've purchased a ticket for the Brewers Cup with not a ton of time to put it together, but concepts sort of framed in my mind. And I think it took me probably 3 or 4 weeks to tell you. And for those listening, Dave has been my coach in every competition that I've ever done. So for me to not tell him that I purchased a ticket for a competition for 3 to 4 weeks, and the competition was maybe 5 or 6 weeks later, was maybe not the greatest decision I've ever made, but worked out in the end, I suppose, because I got some bad cop influence with Dave going, what have you done, man? What do you? So I worked really hard to put it together, and here we are.
So what's the concept? Because it's a pretty unique concept when you start, telling it to me. People that know Cole, he's a bit of a creative cat, and he comes up with, 10 ideas, and 7 are too creative. No, maybe 6 are too creative. 3 are just creative enough. And then 1 is like a historic, unique, what are you on when you come up with this idea that, he's like, oh, we got to do this one. This is the one, dude. What was your concept?
Yeah, the concept was moving away from brewing a single coffee. From the perspective of the brewer, the barista, I think, I don't produce coffee. I don't roast coffee all that much these days. really my skill set or my expertise is I open a bag of coffee. I do my absolute best to figure out how to make it taste the best that it possibly can. And as much as I love doing that, and I've been doing that, for 15 years here, as much as I love doing that, there's also something not so exciting about doing that after a while, and something not so exciting, especially in the competition realm, of how people approach it. Because realistically, in Brewers Cup, we've seen a rinse and repeat sort of presentation standard that has showed up. And I think, I hope nobody takes offense to this, but I find Brewers Cup is a little bit boring because of that. There's not a lot of outside the box happening. There's not a lot of creative or ingenuity that's happening. It's like you're maybe not even allowed to go that far out of the box. So my concept was to create a coffee that only realistically I could see through blending. And, blending's not a crazy foreign concept. The way that I executed it was through a layered blend. So three different layers within a V60, using a very fine grind at the bottom and kind of scraping it up the wall to create a lot of resistance and sort of acidity and mouthfeel. And then a really coarse grind in the middle to kind of fill up the triangle, if you can envision sort of the conical filter there. And that coarse grind in the middle was mostly for flavor and aromatics. And then a kind of in-between grind on the top with a coffee that was very sweet and kind of brought overall balance to the brew. And I think in the presentation, I also attributed the aftertaste to the coffee on the top. So rather than highlighting and sort of speaking to one producer, one farm, one coffee, and sort of regurgitating, for lack of a better term, a spec sheet that these people would provide when we source and purchase coffees, I was able to showcase 4 outstanding coffee producers and highlight each of their coffees for unique individual attributes and kind of use them a little bit like I would be in, maybe cooking or something like that, where spices or different herbs or, different elements of a dish come together to create a harmony of flavors. I think using each of these coffees for each of its individual attributes to bring a unique harmony in the cup profile.
And I imagine, people are thinking, they got questions. Does the layering really matter? Does it matter where the coffee goes? There's probably some people, you can go on YouTube and look up Cole's name and type in Brewers Cup and you can watch the presentation. But I know some people came by and were also, didn't quite believe that it mattered. What was the results in the cup if you say layered it differently or, put the kind of top coffee at the bottom or vice versa?
It made a substantial difference because each of the coffees had a different extraction rate, is what I figured, based on where it was placed in the brew bed. And so in the 3 different layers, we kind of had sort of funky and intense, let's call it, at the very bottom, the fine grind. And it was, I believe in the final recipe, 3 grams out of 22.
Okay.
In the middle was geishas that were very floral, nice complexity, nice flavors. And that was kind of making up, if I recall, 14 grams of the 22. And then on the top was a Lorena, so a very sweet coffee coming from Mexico that was slightly one-dimensional in its flavor profile on its own, but had this like incredible sweetness, and being in the top of the brew really brought harmony and balance. And if I flipped, let's say, the funky with the funky Sudan Rame at the bottom with the sweet Lorena at the top, it would just kind of throw everything out of whack, and I would kind of place the attributes of the overall brew into totally different spots. I would say if you're listening to this and you're curious about it, don't experiment with 3 different layers, but start with 2 and maybe do a 60-40 split on a brew with the 60 at the bottom in both of them, and do the coarser grinds, do a coarse grind for the 60 and a fine grind for the 40. And you could do the exact same coffees in the same placement and just switch the grind setting. You could flip the coffees. The challenge we ended up really finding with building this is the variability, the amount of different variables and options, and became hyper complex and fascinating to explore, but also incredibly challenging. We could have kept making changes still to this day, months and months later, to hone in the brew.
Okay, so let's go back. You're competing in Canada.
Yeah.
And you go up, you present, you're a phenomenal presenter. You wow the judges, you make it through.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go in, you're given this bag of coffee. So you're into the second round, you're given this bag of coffee. What's your kind of, without, I don't know if you got a secret recipe you don't want to reveal or whatever, but what's your strategy kind of? I'm a home brewer. You give me a bag of coffee. What should I, how do I brew a better cup of coffee? Just
how do you do it? So Canada was the old rules. So I don't know if you recall, but we didn't have the semifinal round. Everybody did compulsory.
Yeah, right.
And so first round was open service plus compulsory. And I won the compulsory round. I had the highest score in the compulsory round. I think by 3 points, like a pretty significant margin. Maybe I was 84 points and the next person was 81. So quite substantial. The numbers might be slightly off, but something like that. And my open service actually was not the top scoring. It was the compulsory round that carried. So in that day and age, let's say, you took your compulsory plus your open service, and the collective score in that first round would push you into the top 6. So I qualified in the top 6, I think in second place. I don't think I won the first round. And then once we got to the finals, the top 6, you present the open service again. And I believe I had the third highest open service, but it was a small enough margin that my compulsory score pushed me to the win, if I recall.
Okay, but you're dodging.
I know.
My question, man.
Yeah, what's my compulsory move?
Or just, you don't even need to go that far. Give me, you're a good brewer. Give me some tips. I'm not a very good brewer, man, and I need to up my game.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Give you some tips. Yeah, I think my compulsory, I had a bunch of people say you should try this or try that, or, do the AeroPress technique, whatever that means, or do the French press technique, whatever that means, or use the immersion this or that. And I kind of shook my head and thought, I'm going to brew the way that I brew all the time when I brew, because that's what I'm comfortable with. I'm not going to go up there with a bunch of AeroPresses and try to, figure out the workflow and figure all that stuff out. That to me is totally far-fetched. So I went into it with the mindset that if I can't do the compulsory round the same way that I brew coffee in my kitchen every morning, then I don't deserve to win this round. So I went in with metal Hario V60s. I had a few different variables that I played with in there. And if I recall, I think I did 3 brews to start. I had different filter paper. By process of elimination, I got rid of one type of filter paper. I went into another, I believe, 3 brews, and I used a 22-gram brew, a 3-pour technique with 100-gram bloom, wait 1 minute, and then pour 130 at the 1 minute mark, and then pour 130 at the 2 minute mark. And so First round was decide paper filters. Second round was decide grind setting.
So you would brew those, and then you would taste them, and then you would
Yeah,
decide, okay, like it's tasting a little sharp, or like it's slightly bitter, so I need to like coarsen the grind.
exactly. Yeah. So I would do. We used bentwood in the Canadian nationals, and it shows you, I believe, a particle size, or I forget exactly how it shows you, but I would do sort of, let's say, a small, medium, large, fine, medium, coarse, something like that, and uh, you get 30 minutes. What do you get? Is it 30 minutes? 30 minutes plus 8 minutes plus 7 minutes, or maybe 7 minutes plus 8 minutes. I don't really remember the rules, but it's something like that. So my goal was to try to bang out about 8 brews before having to do my 3 final brews, which you have to do in the last, let's call it 7 minutes. I think it's the 7 minutes you get to do the 3 final brews. And I wanted to have everything prepped before hitting those final 3 brews, coffee's ground, everything, and then 7 minutes start, go 1, 2, 3, and knock them out. So I wanted to get kind of 8 or 9 brews in with this coffee, and I think the coffee was a washed Colombian something or other. It's relatively nice coffee. I was looking for sweetness as the primary. Kind of danced around a little bit on grind setting in that second round of variable shifting, and then on the third round of variable shifting, I would play with how much water in the third pour, and then just a hint of bypass. I think I did a hint of bypass in there too.
And bypass means
Yeah, so shorten the third pour from 130 grams to, let's say, 80 grams, and then I would bypass maybe 20 grams of water directly into the brew underneath, like directly into the coffee. That would not go through the bed of coffee above. It would just go directly into the cup. I had a refractometer with me, so a device that measures the total dissolved solids or the strength of the brew, and I would be using this to also help quantify how strong the brew is based on this device, rather than just using my palate, and have this to help sort of guide me. So that was beneficial, especially in the final 3 brews. I was able to use that to ensure that the strength of the brews that I'm serving the judges are what they, not what they should be. There's not a should be, but they were uniform within the 3.
right.
And that the 3 judges would get a uniform experience when it came down to it.
And so by bypassing, you're dictating the level of strength of the coffee.
Yeah, and the reason you might want to do a bypass is, at least with my brew recipe, 22 to 360, it's just about a 17-to-1 ratio, which is a little bit bigger than people would say the golden rule of thumb is. So some coffees, maybe a more developed roast, maybe a lower quality coffee that doesn't have as much sort of flavor to truly extract out of it, might lean into dryness in the cup if we send too much water, too much extraction through the coffee, if we over extract. So by intentionally under extracting and slightly bypassing, you can avoid some of that dryness, but achieve a similar strength.
Okay.
So I barely any bypass. I think maybe 20 grams of water went into bypass, if I recall, in the nationals. Again, very long time ago. That's probably about a year ago, just about to the day. So the compulsory service, I think, is fascinating in the Brewers Cup, because usually it makes or breaks somebody's opportunity to actually go on and win. We've seen that historically in the World Championship, where the person who wins compulsory, more often than not, goes on to be the champion.
So what does that mean? I'm a competitor? What are you trying to say to me? Spell it out for me, man.
You got to learn how to brew every cup before you can go up there and brew your cup.
Mm. So your recommendation, if I was going to compete, would be what? Spend my time 50-50 on those 2. I should be spending a lot of time on my presentation, and then the other 50% on just brewing any sort of cup of coffee.
Yeah, I would say I would spend more time building your presentation, to be honest with you. However, I would look at every day when you brew a cup of coffee that's your compulsory practice, or that's the beginning of your compulsory practice. Like for me, I was really comfortable in compulsory. I wish I got the opportunity to do it at Worlds, and I'm sure we're about to go there. But for me, I was really comfortable in compulsory because I chose to do, again, the recipe I do in my kitchen, in just about every morning, or the recipe, very similar recipe to what I would do at a trade show, at a pop-up, at a cafe service, wherever I was. And so I didn't feel out of my realm in any way, shape, or form. It was very comfortable for me. And I've, although I haven't practiced the compulsory so much to that moment, I had in theory practiced compulsory for months and months and months, or years, and however you want to look at it, because that's just the recipe that I sort of start with. It's my cupping, it's my calibration, it's the standard for me to brew a cup of coffee.
Okay.
So I think if you want to compete, don't mess around with the brew every single day that you're brewing a cup of coffee. Try to find some sort of standardized approach and use that as your baseline for compulsory. It's a good way to just practice every day like you are in a Brewers Cup championship.
I like that.
There you go.
So you're in the finals, go do your presentation, and they call you, the six of you up, and your name gets called last. What's going through your mind while there's the two of you up there, and then they call your name?
Yeah, a multitude of things are going through my mind. I think one is a little bit, it's like happy, I'm definitely happy, but it's also, I'm looking into the crowd, and in Canada, we don't have a big crowd. So most of the people are people I know and I know quite well. And in the crowd, we've got Boram, who's just arrived. He's on his second day in the city, and we're supposed to be training him to get ready for the World Barista Championship. So I feel, in all honesty, a slight sense of guilt, because obviously I've just done a thing that's going to take some time to personally prepare for, that should not take away from the time that he is here that we've allocated toward his training. So there's a little bit of an, shit, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? How are we going to juggle this? And I remember, and this is a little past your question, but I remember getting into his car after that moment to go, we're going for dinner as a team, and we're going to celebrate. And I remember getting into his car and essentially apologizing and saying, hey, just so you know, this is not going to get in the way of our commitment, and how we're going to be in terms of coaching and getting ready for that would have been the 2023 World Barista Championship, and the Brewers Cup Championship is happening the same days. It's the same dates in Athens. So that was one of the initial responses. And then, obviously I'm also super stoked. This is I think a really fun thing to add into or onto the resume. It's a huge honor. I think many very strong candidates in the competition 2023. It was the biggest Brewers Cup we've ever had in Canada, with 24 people. I wasn't convinced I was going to win. There's sometimes when you kind of have the wind in your sails and you feel you got this. I wasn't quite in the sense that I've got this. And I think definitely felt, humbled and felt great winning.
So you win, and then obviously it's about a month and a half, give or take.
Yeah, give or take.
The World Championship. So what does, we've talked a lot on this podcast about training for the World Barista Championship, but What does training for the World Brewers Cup look like?
I'm up every morning, 5:15. I'm out on the road. I'm doing lots of Rocky Balboa type stuff. Running up to the victory bell every morning, getting my jabs in the air. What is training?
I'm inspired. I'm
inspired too. None of that happened. Sorry to the listeners. My training would be A lot of compulsory training. I took a lot of time to do compulsory training and kind of figure out the workflow in that. Really hoping that I'm going to get to the semifinal round, and they had just changed the rules. So 2023 was the first Worlds where compulsory is its own isolated event. It's the semifinals. So what we ended up witnessing was, I believe, first and second place in the first round did not make it through the compulsory round. They fell to the bottom 6 of the 12. So compulsory played a huge impact in that. Sadly, I didn't make it to the compulsory round, but my preparation was a lot around refining the recipe for the open service. It wasn't really much change there. It was trying to improve the roast profiles, trying to find, like, I reached out to some coffee producer friends and tried to find some coffees to maybe sub into the brew, but I didn't end up making any substantial changes. So working on roast profiles, working on sort of mineral composition of the water, trying to figure out grinder, and trying to put together a more cohesive and more relatable routine, which ended up being around the question of what do you do with the last few grams in the bottom of a bag of coffee.
And what do you do with that?
You create a one of a kind blend, man, that you're going to serve in the World Brewers Cup Championship. What do you think you do with that? It's a rhetorical question. I'm sorry I was rude there. What most people do with that is they just throw it into the next bag or they throw it out. And somewhat of this idea of blending coffees came from, I'd have 3 or 5 or 7 grams or some weird amount of coffee in a bag that's, a kick-ass coffee that I don't really want to waste. And so I would blend that in with whatever else I had kicking around within arm's reach and see how it worked, and then started playing with different grind settings, started playing with different placement in the layers, that sort of stuff, and had some incredible results, had some terrible results, but learned a lot along the way. So that was kind of the thesis or the question for the World Brewers Cup.
It was super interesting to watch because you have, brewing, there's lots of variables. And then you created kind of more variables in that with the blend itself and within the layers. And then also the grind of each of those layers and of each of coffee. So it became, fortunately or unfortunately, it's like unlimited. And we kind of, as time progressed, we kept brewing. We train while we were in Athens, we train, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with Borem, and then kind of go into our Airbnb, and then we'd be practicing kind of 6 p.m. till 10 or 11 on Brewers. And just trying to lock in or fix those variables became very difficult. And we kind of went down to the wire.
Yeah.
Maybe in the right or wrong direction. We don't know. Well,
yeah. And we can never say, the what if type of stuff, but it became endless permutations of the cup, and we could continue tinkering to this day to make it, slightly better, et cetera. But I think at the end of the day, I'm super happy with what I presented. I ranked out 22nd in the world, which is definitely not the placement I was striving for or looking to achieve. However, I just rewatched my presentation before jumping on this podcast, so I had a bit of a refresh. And I think I'm super content with my presentation. To get the opportunity to represent Canada in the World Brewers Cup, super cool. Definitely a highlight of my coffee career, and I think coming 22nd, again, not the ranking I was looking for, but super content with it, because I went out there and I delivered exactly what I wanted to deliver. And where I kind of got penalized or lost points was more in my overall description of the coffee. So accuracy, it's the first year that we it's the first year in Brewers Cup that this particular score sheet was being used, and there's kind of 3 different rows on it. The first one is all about accuracy of what the brewer describes, the aroma, flavor, all of those elements that I mentioned earlier. How the brewer describes those things, and my accuracy there was not super well received. I had some consolidated elements like grape candy that I was told if I had said kind of grapes and white sugar or vanilla sugar or whatever, would have maybe seen higher points. So I got to learn some of the rhetorics there. And then the second row is all about how they perceive the cup beyond not influenced by what I've described, just overall quality perception. So I think there I was in very good type of language to great. So everything's word associated to language. So very good to great, I think is well received. I'm content with that. And then the last row is customer service, presentation, and technical. And I think I had relatively high scores there. And 22nd overall, I'm not a huge way out of the semifinals, maybe 17 points or 20 points or something in that realm. So a couple points here, a couple points there, and I would have jumped up into the semis. So overall, I'm super content with the experience. Made some new friends, made some new memories, got to represent my country, won the World Barista Championship on the other side of the expo. So that also helps balance things out.
I think it's an important lesson, though. Coming 22nd and presenting what you wanted to present is a lesson for a lot of competitors, because they might see that as a fail. Like, oh, you didn't make semis, you didn't make finals. Like, it's not worth it. And I think you saying you presented what you wanted to, and then we as a group learn lots about blending, about grind size. There's a lot of learnings that we took away. You've gone on to support other competitors in a coaching role and applied that learning there, and obviously with the 2024 results, like, worked very well. And I think it's an important lesson for a lot of coaches and competitors if the results aren't quite up to your expectations, maybe.
Yeah, I think you gotta go to your debrief, hear what went well and what did not, and then competitions are always frustrating. Even sometimes when you win, you get some feedback that you kind of think, "What are you talking about? How is it received that way?" And competitions can be frustrating, but I think it's really important to keep your head high and if you want to do it again, do it again. If you don't. Personally, I'm not sure you'll ever see me back on the World Brewers Cup stage, and that's not because I'm disenchanted by the competition. I didn't love it in the same way that I do Barista. So in the future, if you're going to see me back up on a stage, it would be in Barista, far more likely than it would in Brewers.
Yeah, I think it's an important competition, though, that's pushing the limits on brewing.
Totally.
And understand. And it's cool to see people like focus in on one variable that goes on in brewing, because especially, the Canadian market, North American market, we sell in the cafes, we sell brewed coffee.
Right.
It's such a driver. And, these innovations are kind of trickling into everyday service or into automation in brewers or things like that. So I think the competition's got its place in the fold. And
yeah, I mean, we're going to keep brewing coffee. We're going to keep following the World Brewers Cup or National Brewers Cup championships, and we'll participate if the opportunity comes about in terms of sourcing, roasting, coaching. And if somebody on our team at Rosso or Forward wants to participate as a brewer, as a competitor, like, absolutely, we'll support that through. But I think it's probably safe to say I'm a retired Brewers Cup competitor.
there you have it. Breaking news.
There you have it. Not so breaking. Maybe breaking a year ago if you called me earlier for this podcast.
Okay, we gotta step away from the comp, and I need some tips, man. For I'm a home brewer.
Okay.
I just listened to you ramble on about this competition. I'm not quite sure what on earth is going on. Give me some tips, man.
Yeah.
Give me some tangible tips. I'm at home brewing. What are
Okay.
give me 3 tips to how to improve
Three tips.
yeah, 3 tips on how to improve my home brewing.
You got 3 tips for home brewing. I think the first one, the most important one, is get yourself a nice scale. It doesn't have to be a nice scale. Just get yourself a scale. Using a scale is going to be a huge upgrade. And some people are like, "Oh, I'm too impatient to use a scale. I'm just going to make it." It literally takes no more time to use a scale than it does to use a scale. Just put the thing under your server or your cup and your brewer. Just put it underneath. Your scale should probably have a timer. Should tell you how much water you're pouring, and follow a recipe. That's easily number one. Follow a recipe.
So I need a scale to follow the recipe.
Yeah, I think scale and grinder. Those are the two biggest tools you need in your kitchen. That scale doesn't have to be expensive. Grinder, watch one of these YouTube videos that goes through all the different grinders and all the different. Watch one of them, not all of them. There's so many of them. Just buy yourself a nice grinder.
How much is a nice grinder? What's that going to run me?
$300, $200.
Okay.
If we're talking US dollars, maybe $200. And you can get one for cheaper. The one I use, it's $200.
Okay.
Easy Presso is what it's called. It's a great grinder. It's in my bag right now. It travels with me. It's great. So grinder and a scale. Those are two most important things. You can get both of them. Absolutely, no shadow of a doubt. $250 if you use Cole 20 on your. I'm just kidding. I don't have an influencer code for
yeah,
you.
You do. Yeah, you do. I saw you flock in those grinders.
Yeah, maybe we can make one online and send people there. But no, I think those are the two most important things. If you're not using a scale to brew, you don't know how you're brewing or what you're brewing, and it's too much by feel. And you should go by feel, but also by recipe.
So I should weigh my ground coffee or my whole bean coffee.
Yeah, into the grinder, you should weigh that so you know exactly how much you're starting with. You should weigh how much water you're doing in every pour so you know what you're doing. You should have a timer going so you know when to pour next. And once you start doing all of those things, you can try different recipes and you can understand, the impacts of changing variables. And this is when you start to, I think this is when you start to really enjoy brewing, because then all of a sudden you get to see what's happening with more understanding than just watching the thing. So I would say that's kind of the starting point. A nice kettle is important, but not as important, I think, as the other two.
So I just went, I use Cole 20 at Easy Presso. So I got my new grinder.
Sick.
I got a scale.
Yeah.
What's my third improvement tool?
Yeah, I think, is that two tips? I thought tip one was the tools so far. Oh, that's fine. I'll just keep firing.
Yeah, fire on
the so you got to use quality coffee, right? You can't make a quality cup if you don't have a quality coffee. So get yourself a quality coffee. It doesn't have to be from Rosso. It can be from anywhere that is a reputable specialty coffee roaster. You'll see that if you go on their website or their social media pages. You'll kind of quickly grasp what they're into and what they're after. In theory, the better the quality of beans that you're buying, the higher the ceiling for potential quality in the cup. That does not mean price rules all. You can get some great value coffees out there that will have great quality as well. So find yourself a roaster that you keep as kind of a consistent in the pocket go to all the time wherever you're based in the world. I think that's an important one for tip number 2. And then sort of explore other roasters as you're falling down the rabbit hole of brewing. And I would say constantly compare or reference one to the other. Don't compare in a way that this is better than that, but sort of reference and figure out what you like in the cup, because we all have different preferences. So tip number 2 is about the coffee. Tip number 3, I'd say just have fun with it. What kind of answer is that?
What kind of answer is it? Just have fun with it? I can't
Just
action
have
on that.
just have fun with it. It's like, no, enjoy the process, and spend a little time on the research, and you know just it's coffee is probably something, if you like it today, you'll probably like it tomorrow, and the more you understand it, likely the more you'll enjoy it. So enjoy the process and enjoy the ritual. Like for me, I love brewing a cup of coffee, and part of it is because I love drinking coffee, but also I like sharing it with people. I like sharing my recipe with people. I like having a conversation like this, with you or with others whenever this comes up. And there's something special about the ritual. So like have fun, enjoy the ritual. There's a lot of like opportunity to be mindful and present as you're brewing that cup of coffee. A lot of opportunity to really hone in and disconnect from whatever it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And for me, I think I actually enjoy the ritual more than I enjoy the outcome. Like if I'm solo, like yesterday as an example, I'm currently visiting my grandparents, and my mom's here, and we're taking a break. I'm kind of on a vacation sort of thing, taking a break after WBC, and nobody wanted a cup of coffee. So I didn't make one either. And, I'm okay with not having a cup, but when everybody wants one, yeah, like I'll get in and sort of do the practice. But I think for me, I enjoy the ritual more than I do the product itself. And
Yeah, the process is part of the is more important than the outcome. Kind of just like competition. It was like the
kind of just like competition, it's all about the process. So have fun with it. Sweet. And then ask questions. You got the opportunity to reach out to your favorite coffee company through social media. You got the info email that they all have set up. You got whatever, the chat bubble on websites that you can, in theory, chat with a human. I know on roastocoffeeroasters.com you can. And reach out, ask questions. If they're not willing to support you, maybe they're not the right roasting company to put in your pocket. Maybe ask questions to a different company, and they should support you in a way that should get you a better result in your day-to-day practice of brewing.
Yeah, I think there's tons of resources. Unlike when we started in coffee
Yeah.
a long time ago, there's so many resources now on how to brew better coffee, how to taste coffee more. Yeah, use those resources just on either on YouTube or whatever podcast. And I think that's a great, connecting with the community. You could hit Cole up on social media and he will reply. Like you can hit Borum up or, Miki, like most people will reply if you have, a nicely crafted question about, how to get more out of your coffee. So coffee is very accessible, and part of our role in the, community of it is to like bring more people in. And that's through just understanding how to brew better coffee.
Great answer. Fantastic. Yeah, ask questions.
I got a question. Water is whatever, people claim 99% of coffee.
Yeah.
What should I do? Calgary water in our city is high ppms, lots
Yeah.
of chlorine, doesn't taste very good on its own. Should I be using that? Should I be buying bottled water, or am I worried about the microplastics? Should I be, going to the well and should I handcraft my water? Like you built your water, so what does that look like?
Yeah. So water is 98 or 99% of a coffee by definition. So it's arguably a more important ingredient than the coffee itself. So if we were to brew with Calgary tap water, we're probably going to make a very flat cup of coffee. No real flavor, vibrancy, no clarity. Everything's going to be kind of muddy or muddled or something in that type of language. And that has to do with there's just too much mineral concentration in Calgary's tap water, and some stuff we don't want in there for brewing coffee. And what that means is there's not a lot of space in there for the water to extract the coffee oils and pull that down into the cup. So on the flip side, we don't want 0 ppm water, because that's just, it doesn't have the minerals to sort of highlight, support, and make acidity, sweetness, body, etc. sort of shine in the cup. Some people brew with 0 ppm water. It's not crazy. Obviously, lots of people brew with tap water in Calgary. We're fortunate to live in a city where we can drink our tap water.
Mm-hmm.
I think in lots of parts of the world, it is not non-consumable. And what I would recommend for anybody who wants to really elevate their home brewing game, let's say, is to maybe look at distilled water and adding mineral packs. There's lots of different brands out there. You could look up minerals for coffee online, and I'm certain on the front page of Google you'll get many different opportunities for different mineral compositions, different essentially single packets that you can purchase to add to certain amounts of water that will give you, a certain recipe build. For me, in competition, it was Aqua Code. I used 125 ppm composition, which was one of their packets to 5 liters of water. I found distilled water in Calgary easy to purchase. I found some distilled water in Greece, not as easy to purchase. And for me, that yielded the best results with my particular recipe. If I was you and I am at home, new home brewer on this journey, I would look to just one fixed recipe. So don't play too much with the water. It's another variable that you can dive deep into. I would just look to standardize and make small amounts of the water you're going to brew, because it's also got a somewhat of a freshness or shelf life to it. If you add a mineral pack and use it a month from now, it's some of that is going to dissipate or disappear. Always boil fresh water for your coffee. If you continue reboiling water, you're going to continue concentrating down the mineral content. So you're going to increase the ppm, which is going to make a sort of murky, cloudy, potentially murky or cloudy cup of coffee with low flavor clarity. Yeah, distilled water, or find a certain bottle of water. Like I remember when we were in Thailand, the best water, we were asking the local coffee community, what's the best water for brewing? And it was a simple 7-Eleven select out of 7-Eleven convenience stores, and it had, I don't quite recall, but 60 ppm, 70 ppm, and the right composition of minerals. You can deep dive on minerals. There's lots of classes online, YouTube, or different coffee outlets that would teach you about minerals and what each one will do to the cup of coffee in terms of flavor additive. Is that the way to say that? Flavor composition?
That's a good tip. I like that one.
Sweet. So now it's 4 tips. It was really interesting. You and I obviously spent a lot of time in Asia the last sort of 6 months or so, and got to know a lot about the coffee community there, got to know a lot about coffee consumption there. And I thought it was so fascinating how educated home brewers are. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't have a water that is consumable off the tap. They need to be conscious of the water they're purchasing and using for their coffee brewing. And so many, and daily consumption. So many people would have different types of water at home. One for drinking, one for coffee brewing, one maybe for making, sourdough, one for making, whatever they've got. And they've figured out that each has different benefit for different use case. And there were many people that I think had a much higher knowledge of water composition than I honestly do in the home brewer market in Asia, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, fascinating to think how the impact of unfiltered water to your tap can have a big impact on your flavor of coffee that you're brewing and how water interacts with it. So
yeah, you can take think it's good to remember you can take the best coffee in the world, and if you use, let's say, Calgary tap water.
Just hating on Calgary, eh?
No, man, I love Calgary, but Calgary's tap water is not good for brewing coffee, and it will just absolutely destroy that coffee. But you change the water, and you get a whole different result. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Any other tips?
Any other tips? If you're not familiar with coffee competition, and I would assume that if you're listening to this and you're all the way at the end here, you likely are. But if you've never participated, I would say just give it a try. Start by looking through the rules and regulations. Look at the sensory score sheet, the technical score sheet in Brewers or Barista or whichever fascinates you, and look to use that as a rubric, or look to use that as sort of a pathway to better understand your daily practice. If you look at the sensory score sheet for the World Brewers Cup, it's like this is obviously the criteria that we're looking for the best brewed coffee in the world. And if you take that score sheet, and it's all language-based scoring, which means, so it's a hedonic scale, they call it. Everything's out of 9, which means if you think this is good by language, you associate that with a score. And I believe good is a 5 out of 9, if I've got that right on Brewers Cup. I think very good is a 6. I think great is a 7. Excellent is an 8. Extraordinary is a 9. Doesn't really matter. You can challenge me in the comments below. But I would look to use that in your day-to-day practice, whether you're a home brewer, you're a barista in a coffee shop, you are, a roaster doing quality control. Like, this is a fundamental rubric for evaluating the best in the world, and it's very approachable to everyone in the world. So look to that as a sort of standardized procedure to improve your day-to-day, whether you are participating in the competition or not. But I would also challenge you to participate in the competition, because who knows, you might learn something. Wouldn't that be crazy? You might learn something, you might improve, you might go further than you think you will. You might realize you're highly skilled in this thing, but never sort of gave yourself the credit for it. In 2023, when I won, there was a home brewer that was in the finals. It was first time ever competing. In 2023 at the Worlds, there were 2 people in the finals. I believe 2 people in the finals, both first time ever competing. They both work in industry, but still first time ever competing. And, that's incredible. So give yourself more credit than you think you have in the past, and maybe push yourself to compete, because who knows what sort of doors that will open for you.
I think it's a great call on the home brewer and signing up. It's super cool to see people, outside of working baristas competing, and it showcased that, we want to bring more people into the industry, allowing those people to showcase their skills and coming with different ideas. Like, being outside the industry, sometimes you come with something that no one else is kind of looking at it at a different angle. And yeah, we encourage, if you're thinking about doing it, just like sign up. It's so important, and it's such a fascinating, fun way to learn, just as Cole was saying. So
yeah, you'll meet new friends. You'll connect with a community that maybe you haven't touched into before, and literally, you will learn something. I promise you will learn something through the process.
You're off to Panama, right? Tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Nice, man.
I leave for Panama tomorrow. So looking to visit some different coffee producers, hopefully get some fun coffees up into our inventory that will be made available through Forward for people that are interested in roasting, or also at Rosso for people that are interested in a roasted product. And I start at Lost Origin on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
Meeting with Franz. Lost Origin was the producer of the 2024 World Brewers Cup Champions coffee. So I'm starting there on Sunday. So hopefully find some nice coffees to start with there, and don't blow the entire budget, because lots more to come.
Okay, let's end on that.
Sweet. Love it. Dave, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and chat with you about brewing coffee. Really enjoyed it.
Nice. Enjoy yourself in Panama. We'll rendezvous in Calgary, I don't know when.
Sometime.
Hey, look at that. You've made it. Thanks for listening to By the Drip. If you could please subscribe, rate, and give us a comment, that'd mean the world to me. Till next time. I got a question.
Okay, hit it.
Water.
What are we doing here?
No, we're falling apart.